Welcome to this episode of Real Talk. My name is Christy Ivy. I am the founder and president of Christy's Cause, a nonprofit in Southwest Florida working to eradicate child sex trafficking and exploitation. Today we will be discussing why data is so vital in the fight against human trafficking. To quantify the vastness of the human trafficking epidemic, the State Attorney's Office for Florida's 20th Judicial Circuit launched the HT Counts project. Our guest today is Special Victims Unit Chief with the State Attorney's Office, Francine Donnorummo. Thank you for joining us to share a little bit more about HT Counts with us. Would you share an overview of the project with us?
Of course. HT Counts collects non-identifying data on victims of human trafficking and exploitation from both law enforcement agencies and service providers. HT Counts aims to identify local trends in human trafficking, provide us with useful data for our agency partners so that we can evaluate and design service programs for these victims of human trafficking. Human trafficking can only be diminished by a collaboration of service providers, law enforcement agencies, professionals, medical service providers, and each traumatized victim deserves the attention that can only be given to them if we identify the victims and the services that they need. This is a project near and dear to State Attorney Amira Fox and the entire office, and we are happy to launch this program.
Prior to HT Counts, was there a way to get an accurate assessment of human trafficking in our community?
Not specific to our community. We have the National Human Trafficking Hotline run by the Polaris Project, and they do collect fabulous data. They're an amazing program, as well as NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they too collect data, but they are national agencies, and they collect data from people calling in to their agencies. HT Counts, on the other hand, we look to the service providers to identify victims, and they report their data to us. And what we're able to do is take in their demographic information. We are able to figure out what services they need per the needs of the community. So it's far more narrow to the services that we need for our area.
And you're not having to rely on somebody calling in. You're able to get that data from service providers.
Correct, because as we know, many of our victims are non-identifying victims. They don't identify themselves as victims.
Right.
They're not willing to call into a hotline. And so we need to reach out to them and find who they are and see what we can do for them.
So true. What are some consequences of underreported numbers?
Well, if we don't know the victims out there, then we don't know the resources that we need. We need to know which demographic are we targeting. And we won't know that unless we actually gather data.
You know, I'm sure if gathering data was an easy project, a lot of people would be doing it. But to our knowledge, we're really pioneering this project, HT Counts. What have some of the hurdles been?
Well, there are big hurdles. So you have to have agency buy-in, which we have. They really want to help. They want to help against human trafficking and people exploiting children, but they have to gather the data within their agency. And the more sophisticated the agency, they may have a program where they can pull the data by their computer network, but it's not going to be all the data that we're asking for. And then we have the less sophisticated agencies that are doing amazing work for victims out there, and they have to hand tally that information for us. Now, the benefit of having Christy's Cause work with us and our office and many people working on it is we can assist these agencies in coming up with the best way and the easiest way for them to provide us with this data.
That is so key. When we were talking with Corporal Alan Wilkett and Lieutenant Lindauer, it all seems to go back to manpower and resources. So I know as we're able to help strategize with these agencies and organizations, then they're be able to submit their data in an easier way.
Yes, absolutely.
So who can share their data?
Well, we have identified providers who will be a great resource. Think of addiction services, mental health facilities. We know many women's shelters work directly with human trafficking victims. Hospitals, the ER staff clearly law enforcement agencies and other service providers, Department of Children and Families. However, if there is a service provider out there that would like to provide us with their data, we are then more than happy to assess what data would be valued and how we could gather that data from them.
You know, as we've sat around numerous occasions and brainstormed what pockets or professions have we not tapped into, just something as simple as dentists where, you know, maybe girls are being forced to go in and be seen. There's probably populations out there that are offering services that don't even necessarily realize that they're seeing human trafficking victims.
Absolutely, and some of that is just training and providing them with the resources so they know where to go if they come across a victim.
That makes a lot of sense. So what kind of data do you collect?
Now, we are collecting a vast amount of data, so I'm just going to summarize some of the categories. So the basic trafficking information: how were you trafficked? What was the method of trafficking? Is it labor trafficking? Is it sex trafficking? Is it through a strip club? Is it through prostitution? I mean, there are many different ways. It's working in the fields? Is it in the restaurant business? Are you a domestic worker? So we collect the type of trafficking, and it gets pretty detailed, not dissimilar to the Polaris Project that also collects the methods of trafficking. The victim characteristics. So are you a teenage runaway? Are you over 18? Are you under 18? What is your ethnic background? What race do you identify with? What gender do you identify with? Do you have a mental illness? Did you have a teen pregnancy? Like, there's so many different, very specific victim characteristics that we can gather. Do you have disabilities? Things along that nature. How is it advertised? You know, because we really want, if we're going to gather the data, we much want it very comprehensive so we can really look at it and see what we need to do with this information. And you know, when we're gathering information from law enforcement, we want to know, well, what charges were charged? You know, because sometimes we'll charge human trafficking. If it's a child exploitation, was it somebody producing child pornography? So we have a vast array of charges as well. And so we're going to look at that through the collection of this data.
So our state attorney, Amira Fox, was recently invited to be on Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody's statewide human trafficking task force. How can HT counts be a valuable tool for the state?
I think it really can be. From the very beginning, HT Counts has been mindful of its scalability. We can cater it to our judicial circuit. It can be catered to individual judicial circuits. It can also be expanded statewide. And so it's truly just the needs of the state and what the committee decides, but it certainly can go to scale.
What are some ways this project can create positive change?
Well, you know, if we identify the victims and we get the community behind it. So if you have service providers and law enforcement and the medical community providing you with data, they're vested in the cause, right? So that helps it right there. And then you've identified the victims, and we can see what we can do to help them, how to target that community. What is your community? And so we need to know where to look.
What are some of the benefits of being able to provide the community this type of data?
They become aware that the human trafficking and child exploitation actually exists. Where does it exist? What can they do in their field of work to help? And then where are we going to put our resources?
That's exceptional. I really believe data is key to helping us move forward in this fight against human trafficking. You know, unfortunately, the crime of human trafficking is severely lacking in data, which I know has created a lot of frustration for all of us, and it creates frustration out in the community as well, which has had a consequential impact on social understanding, funding, policy, and legislation. Christy's Cause is honored to be the advocating nonprofit working alongside the state attorney's office in this valuable project. If your organization has human trafficking data that you would like to share, please reach out to us via email provided in the description of this video. Make sure you take advantage of additional resources that we will also provide in the description of this video. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Real Talk.